guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Shah and this is Thoroughly Enjoyed Books. Today I am bringing you a slightly belated December wrap up. It's a little bit late purely just because I wanted to do all of the New Year's videos which you've already seen. So my top books of the year, my reading goals. I don't think my list of 10 books I want to read is up yet, but my book club announcement for the Dog-Eared Book Club is definitely up by now. So I just wanted to get those out the way and I thought December's wrap up can wait just a little bit. I didn't actually get as much reading done in December as I thought. I thought by just before Christmas I had already read about 4 books that month. I'd read 1, which I don't know why I thought I'd read 4. But I finished the month having read 4. One of those was a physical book and then the others were all audiobooks because I actually spent the last week or so of the year very, very ill in bed on antibiotics, which is sad, and I couldn't do any reading. I was so tired and groggy and felt so ill that I just couldn't physically read anything. So I'm going to go through the books that I read in the month of December and let you know what I thought of them. The only book I physically read was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is part 1 of the Little Women duology. How would you describe it? Little Women was published in 2 parts. This is part 1, Little Women. Part 2 is Good Wives, and I just read this first bit when they are young teenagers. Little Women is a classic. I'm sure a lot of you already know what it's about. It follows the 4 March sisters, Jo, Beth, Amy and Meg. This is such a delightful little book. It is set in our world during the Civil War in America, and the girl's father has gone off to fight in the Civil War and has kind of left them a little bit poor. It has some political intrigue in here. You find out what the family's stances on the Civil War and finances and all that kind of thing. And then it just follows the sisters' relationships and, you know, with each other and with the wider world. I really enjoyed this book. I wanted to read it before I see the film, which I'm actually seeing. I will have seen it by the time this video goes up, but I'm seeing it on Monday. I remember reading at least half of it when I was younger. I don't know if I ever read the whole thing, but rereading it now as an adult was just delightful. It was one of my favourite books of the year and I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. Next book that I read, I listened to on audiobook, and it is Every Woman by Jess Phillips. Jess Phillips is a Labour MP in the UK and she's currently in the leadership battle, I think. She's potentially going to be the next leader of the Labour Party, and I don't know how I feel about that. So she's quite brash, she's quite outspoken, and this is her book where she's written about being a woman in politics. So she talks about how people perceive her, how people represent her, how the way she talks. So she has quite a strong Brummie accent. That's a Birmingham accent for people who don't know. And she's not your typical MP. She's not very ladylike, she's not very proper. She is quite a typical working class woman. And this tells her story about how she got into politics, what her journey was. I found out that she started in quite a similar area to me career-wise. So she used to work for Women's Aid and work for a number of women's organisations. I currently work for criminal justice and have a specialism in women's justice, which I adore working in, absolutely love it. So I could relate to a lot of what she was saying. She talks about the public services that have been stripped back by our Tory government, and overall I really enjoyed what she had to say. My main criticism of this book is she makes a lot of it about Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn was the Labour leader. He still is to this day, but he's about to step down. But he faced a lot of coups from his own party who tried to overturn him and didn't believe what he stood for, and were very vocal about this. And if you're going to tell me that that didn't have an impact on how the public saw Corbyn, then I don't know what to say to you. In my opinion, no matter whether you believe in your leader or not, you follow your leader, especially if it's a political party, because people don't seem to have any problem following Boris Johnson. She did throw in these snarky remarks every now and then about Corbyn, which seemed to just have no bearing on what she was talking about. She would talk about a Women's Aid matter and then she would throw in a comment like, but Corbyn doesn't believe in this, and I just didn't feel like it was necessary. It felt a bit smarmy and it very much detracted from this book for me. So overall I gave it 3 stars, but I do think it is a very good look into why somebody stands to be an MP, why somebody believes what they believe and why they make the decisions that they make. Next audiobook is one that I had been listening to on and off for about 2 or 3 months, and that is A Close and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. This is the second book in the Wayfarers series. The first book is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which I also listened to an audiobook, and I am going to listen to the final book on audiobook as well, because I just think they're a really good way of getting into this story. So I can't go into too much detail about what this book is about. This book just follows on from the last book. It follows different characters, but it has that same character-driven focus where you learn so much about the background of the characters that you can't help falling in love with them and feel a physical connection to them. I thought that this was a great sequel. I did find it a little bit confusing in the beginning. I wasn't quite sure what characters we were following, what their importance to the story was, because like I said, it's a different cast of characters to the first book mostly. I thought that the way that Becky Chambers set this in a space world with lots of different aliens and different planets and different races, sexuality, genders, all that kind of stuff was a really good exploration of not what it means to be humanity, because they weren't humans, but just of personhood. I thought it was enthralling and I really enjoyed it, and I definitely cannot wait to continue this series. And then the last book that I listened to on audiobook, I actually started reading in physical form a few months ago, and it is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. So if you've seen my top books of 2019, you'll know that Normal People by Sally Rooney was one of my favourite books of the year. I'm hesitant to say it was my favourite, but I think it was probably my favourite of the year. And when I started reading Conversations with Friends in August, I didn't gel with it very well. This follows 4 characters told mostly from the perspective of our young girl Frances, who's a 21-year-old student from Ireland who is best friends with a character called Bobby, who used to be her girlfriend, and they meet 2 actors, creatives called Melissa and Nick, who are a married couple, and they both seem to embark on romantic relationships with somebody in the married couple, which is a premise that I didn't like when I started listening to it back in August. However, when I was listening to it again, I connected to it a lot better. It follows the idea of a doomed relationship, that nothing can really work out properly if the relationship starts on infidelity and adultery, and I just felt that that was a wonderful concept that was explored. I didn't find the characters likeable at all. You could not justify their actions at all. It was quite painful a lot of the time. I found that listening to it on audiobook was a lot more palatable than reading it. If you're reading it, it can be quite a struggle to get past the unlikableness of these characters, whereas if you're on audiobook, it sounds more like a conversation with friends. I don't necessarily think that that title suits the book, because it's not about conversations with friends or between friends. It's kind of a bit more complicated than that. I enjoyed it in the end. I gave it 4 stars in the end. Probably more of a 3.5. I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to see how I feel about it later on. But overall, I enjoyed it much more on audiobook. So those are all the books that I read in the month of December. I'm so excited to share with you what I've already been reading in January. It's a crazy time of year. Let me know if you've read any of these books in the comments down below. Let me know what you did think of them, if you read any of them. And I can't wait to see you in another video very soon. Bye!